Hello and welcome to the Mindful Podcast. From somewhere different this week, I'm coming to you from the departure gates of Dublin Airport because I'm heading off on a trek and I'm at that perfect moment where after months and months of planning, you get those thoughts of, what the hell am I doing this for again? Why did I sign up for this? What awaits me? Well, hopefully I'm going to find out, and even more importantly, you're going to find out, because I would have loved, before I took this trip, to listen to a podcast from someone I could relate to who would tell me what kind of people go on these trips, how fit do you have to be, what kind of gear do you need, what's the training like, what is altitude sickness like and how do you avoid it, and all those kinds of questions. So hopefully, maybe after listening to this podcast, you might be willing to take on a challenge that maybe you thought was beyond you, whatever it happens to be. Maybe it's just getting on an airplane if that's not your kind of thing. So hopefully you can join me for this journey. This is the Mindful Podcast. Welcome everybody to a special end of series bonus episode all about going on the trek of a lifetime. In this episode I'm going to be looking at 2 treks that I have done, and hopefully you'll learn about them. Maybe they will inspire you to taking on those challenges or any other challenge in your life. Or maybe you're just curious and think, I would never do that, but I like hearing about it. I'm going to be looking at the trek to Kilimanjaro, which I did in 2024, and the trek to Everest Base Camp, which I did in April of this year. 2 quite different adventures, but ones that have a lot of similarities too. And I'll be looking at as many aspects of it as possible to help you get a clear picture in your mind of what's involved. And also look at the reasons why we do these things and the lessons we can learn from them as well. So thank you for joining me once again. Let's pull on those hiking boots and head for the hills. Firstly, let me give you a rough outline of the mountains themselves. So Kilimanjaro is in Tanzania, in Africa, and is the world's tallest freestanding mountain. And by freestanding, it simply means it's not part of a mountain range like the Himalayas. Kilimanjaro just seems to leap out of the horizon at you and screams, "Climb me!" Whereas when you're trekking in the Himalayas and you're moving towards Everest Base Camp, because the mountain range is so vast, you spend most of your time not actually seeing Everest at all. You're looking at all the other ones until you're right up close. Whereas Kilimanjaro, as I say, you can see for miles. Kilimanjaro is a little bit higher than Everest. The summit sits at 5,895 meters. That's over 19,000 feet. In contrast, Everest Base Camp is slightly lower at 5,364 meters. That's about 17,500 feet. So a difference of around 530 meters between the two. But despite Kilimanjaro being taller, its rapid 6 to 8 day ascent can make it physiologically more challenging. The Everest Base Camp trek offers a longer 12 to 14 day approach with built-in acclimatization days. So if you are thinking about doing one of these treks and wondering just how much time you'd need to take off work to do it or be away from the family, know that the Kilimanjaro trip took me 12 days, whereas the Everest one took me 16, door to door. But here's the thing. Yes, you go up Kilimanjaro quicker, so it can be more tiring and physically demanding, but you're spending less time at altitude, which in itself is easier on your system. Whereas although Everest Base Camp is not as intense from a trekking point of view, you do spend longer at altitude, which can affect your body and your energy levels in different ways. So they're kind of the same, but different, if you get me. But we'll get into more of it as we go, and you'll be hearing little clips from me on both those adventures. Firstly, let's talk about getting there. It is possible to book these kinds of trips yourself, lock in your own guide, your own flights and all that kind of stuff. But most people, particularly from this part of the world, tend to use an adventure tour company. For my trips, I went with a company called Earth's Edge. They're Irish, which I really liked. They've got great experience visiting and working in these parts of the world, bringing groups there. But most of all, they've just got a really good sound approach to treating local guides and porters and support teams really well. They're fair, they pay them well, and very importantly, there's a doctor with you on every one of the trips. and that was something that I really wanted. Earth's Edge is the company I chose, but there are, of course, so many other tour groups you can choose too. Some tour companies look after every aspect, including your flights. Sometimes you got to look after that part yourself. You'll obviously need insurance, but you don't tend to get that from the same companies you use when you're going for your 2 weeks in Malaga. You'd use a specific insurance company that covers adventure trips. Now, this is an important one because since Brexit, a few of the companies have pulled out of Ireland, so we don't have as many adventure insurance companies as they would have, say, in the UK. And most of them will cover you up to a height of around 6,000 meters. If you're going beyond that, you'll need more specialist cover. And one thing I would say, if you've had some significant health issues, in particular heart issues, then I would do some insurance investigating before you book the trek, because sometimes particular conditions can rule you out of getting cover, and it could just be a little bit more expensive. But no matter what you've experienced, you will find insurance to cover you. Now, most people will book their trek around a year in advance, possibly more, but I've come across people who've jumped on board with just a few weeks to go. There's no hard and fast rule. I guess it depends on how prepared you want to be. So let's talk about the fitness levels that you require. It's a question I get asked a lot. How fit do I need to be? Look, a basic level of fitness is obviously going to help you. There are long trekking days, and some days you could be walking for up to 9 hours. What I would say though is that on both my trips, I've come across people of very varying fitness levels. Some people who were super fit in the gym 5 times a week, others who were weekend warriors with the odd hike. One thing I would say though is that Kilimanjaro does require, I think in my experience, a higher level of trekking fitness than Everest Base Camp. And when I say trekking fitness, I mean the kind of stamina that you need to have for really long hikes, as opposed to, say, an intense HIIT class for an hour. Gym work does help. Anything to do with your legs or your butt will definitely serve you well. And one part of the training I would recommend is getting long hikes in as regularly as you can and stacking them. Doing, say, 2 days in a row or 3 days in a row if you can do it. And that will really get that muscle memory going for those longer hiking days on the mountain. But both treks are a great physical test, especially Kilimanjaro. And here I am on the mountain after the first day's trekking.
Well, day one hike is finished. We are currently in our tents trying to blow up a thing. I'm so tired, I can't talk. Our hike was pretty much vertical for 6 hours and 43 minutes, according to my app on my phone, on my watch. We kept kind of waiting for it to sort of plateau out, but it just never did. It was like going up an endless flight of stairs, but through the most incredible rainforest. And true to its word, it pissed rain in the forest. Very dense vegetation, so you couldn't really see it. He wasn't like loads of views, but just really beautiful, very unique landscape. And at one point the heavens opened and we got absolutely pelted with hailstones the size of wine gums, angry wine gums from the sky that were left in the freezer. And that was actually painful in parts, and we got a bit wet, and he felt a little bit stressed there for a few moments. But yeah, it was just chats, and you might be chatting 1 minute and then you might be quiet, and we stopped for a couple of breaks, but the breaks aren't like the breaks you'd have on your own hike, where you kind of sit down for 25 minutes and eat a ham and cheese sandwich and contemplate the world. Like, you literally have 5 minutes. You got to go to the toilet, do whatever you need to do in your backpack, grab a snack, and then you're off again. So it was a long, tough hike, and but we're feeling happy now. The sun is going down. The setting is absolutely stunning. We're looking at the setting sun lighting up the rainforest all around us. Our amazing porters have set up our tents, and we're all going to go to our mess tent in a few minutes and have popcorn and tea. And I have a feeling it's going to be the greatest popcorn I've ever eaten.
What I was basically trying to describe there was a little inflatable mini mattress to put between your butt and the ground, because that's one of the main differences between the two treks. On Kilimanjaro, it's an open mountain, and you're camping. There's nowhere to stay. It literally is in the wilderness. Everest Base Camp takes you on a journey up through small villages right up close to base camp. So you're staying in what they call tea houses, not tents. Very humble guest houses. They get less glamorous the higher up you go. So in the clip you just heard, I was feeling pretty good fitness-wise. And your tour company may run a training weekend to prepare you as well. Mine did. And that allows you to meet everybody, get excited, chat through everything. You get PowerPoint presentations about the whole trek, the route you're going to take, all that kind of information. And most importantly, the gear. Because you know what? Training and flights and insurance and all that good stuff aside, there was one major cause of stress for both these trips. Everybody in the group felt it, and it was something I did not expect. Allow me to explain on night 1 in Tanzania.
So we have arrived at the hotel. There's mosquito nets around the beds, and I'm here packing my bag for, I would say, the 17th time. I'm learning that so much of this kind of trip has to do with how you pack your bag, what you've got in the bag, and how much that bag weighs. And you're constantly bargaining, going, okay, if I'm putting this in, then I need to take this. You see, obviously for an airplane, there's a 23 kilo allowance, so you can go to town on it. I would never have a 23 kilo bag. However, because the porters, these wonderful locals who thrive on the tourist business of the mountain, because they carry your main duffel bag up, you have a backpack each day, you have to keep it below 15 kilos. Because of all of this, the packing is paramount. And I guess we're also used to just throwing stuff into the suitcase going on holidays. And I am one of those people. I am the I'd better throw it in just in case person. It's been on everybody's mind. It's kind of strange. I never thought that the packing would be such a big element of it. So if you looked into my bag, it looks incredibly organized because there's a lot of rain. So even though my bag is pretty waterproof, everything I own has to be divided into dry bags. These are literally waterproof bags that you put stuff into and then lie on them and jump on them. You know, if you're like me and your wife insists that you jump up and down on the recycling when it's in the bin, it's pretty much like that. You're constantly trying to squeeze air out of things to try and squeeze them in, and you're filling any gaps with little bits and bobs. I would say a fair whack of my bag is snacks. But the good thing is, the higher I go, the lighter the bag will get. I think it's one of those things that's worthy of mention because it's not something that you ever think about being an issue when you take on one of these challenges. But actually, before you get to the mountain, this has been one of the bigger things on your mind. Obviously, remembering everything you need to bring and then working out the great baggage Tetris game that is arranging your duffel bag and your backpack.
Yes, it's true. Some mornings you will be utterly exhausted from just trying to zip up your bag and get it ready for the porters on time, and you haven't even taken a step. Equipment-wise, I'm not going to go through every single item you'd need because your tour company will give you a great exact list of everything that you need to bring with you, and there's also really helpful videos on YouTube. There's nothing hugely unusual about it. You got your rain gear, base layers, mid layers, and then if you're on Kilimanjaro you might need slightly warmer clothes for that summit night, and you have the usual headlamps, phone chargers and all that good stuff. You'll definitely have a first aid kit, which you'll need for the basic blister necessities, antibiotics. You'll have medicine in there for headaches, for stomach bugs, diarrhea, constipation. Your first aid kit is your friend, so do not skimp on those drugs. You will also need to get some vaccinations, depending on your destination, but some health insurance policies do cover these. Packing wise, I really recommend practice packing sessions. Now that may sound weird, but it's such a big part of it, and I hate being the person that's holding other people up. I was always late for everything in my younger years, so I really want to be prepared, and practice packing sessions help. All of us in our WhatsApp groups before we left were sharing stories and pictures and advice about what to bring and most importantly, how to get it into your bag. In the previous clip, I mentioned toilet breaks, and this is another question I get asked a lot. What's the toilet situation? Okay, but look, it depends on the trip. First, let's start with Kilimanjaro. Again, it's an open mountain. There will be a lot of going to the toilet on the fly. Obviously, that is easier for us men, but there's no shortage of big rocks to hide behind. And in fairness, everybody gets used to it really quickly. Back at the camp, your main toilet is a chemical toilet that one of the incredible porters carries up all the way to the top and all the way back down again. And it's quite private. It has a little zip enclosure. And actually, because it's only used between you and your group members, which is rarely more than 15 people ever, it's pretty clean. Everest Base Camp is a different story. Of course, when you're out walking, you're doing your business in nature. But the main toilets you'll come across will be in these tea houses that you're staying in. And these are of varying quality. There can be pretty clean ones that look like home, or it can be one of those awful holes in the ground things that I have never worked out how to use without pooing into my trousers. There are no proper flush systems, particularly high up in the Himalayas, so expect barrels of water, jugs, and washing your hands a million times. I know some of this can sound horrible when we're sitting at home in our lovely cushy houses, but you know what? When you get up there, you're not thinking about it that much. I've never heard anyone say, I would have enjoyed myself if it wasn't for the toilets. One thing I do want to say though, is that one of the greatest challenges of these kinds of treks is simply staying healthy, regardless of how fit you are. Altitude can do funny things to your body. Plus, you're in strange countries with strange bugs and a lot of people mixing together, traveling from all over the world. So you could pretty much assume at some point you're going to have a stomach bug. It's just the way it is. So when people ask me about what kind of preparation do I need in terms of hiking, I would say wait until you have a stomach bug, diarrhea and a chest infection and then go on a 3-day hike. I'm exaggerating, but that is one of the biggest tests of these trips. Staying positive, staying strong and doing your best when you really feel like crap. Everybody in our group had at least a day on Everest where they were really suffering. Lying down at lunchtime, wondering how they were going to get through the day, taking meds, running for toilets. It's just part of it. And I guess they're not putting that stuff up on Instagram. Here's me on my 10th visit to the toilet today. But that's the reality. So in terms of preparation, anything we can do for our immune system is really good. Taking your multivitamins, looking after yourself, getting lots of sleep in advance. Not overdoing it in the gym before you go, because you just never know. I did pretty good on Everest with altitude, but I was unlucky enough to pick up a throat infection on the journey over to Kathmandu, and then that turned into a chest infection, and then that turned into a sinus infection. So I was trying to do all my hiking with that going on and just praying that I didn't get anything else. So I don't want to paint a grim picture, but these trips are an endurance test more than a fitness test. That's how I would see it. I've seen people not make it all the way, and it was never due to a lack of fitness. It was due to illness. But here's the thing. When you get back, you don't remember any of that. You just remember the incredible views, the incredible people, the incredible challenge, and you see it as a trip of a lifetime. So, moving on to sleep, because this is a big one for a lot of people. As I said, on Kilimanjaro, you're sleeping in tents, and on Everest, you're in tea houses. Each has its challenge. Obviously, tents are less comfortable. You're lying on the ground, albeit on a sliver of air mattress, but tents leak. Other camps can be noisy, and because altitude is constantly triggering your stress response, sleep can be challenging, especially the higher up you are. The weather in Kilimanjaro and Everest can get really cold at nighttime, and that can affect our sleep too. But chances are you'll have the right kind of sleeping bag and a lot of warm clothes to put on. There was many a night where I just decided to put on all my clothes, whatever works. And although you may be offered the option of your own tent or room, you may find yourself sharing, in which case people snore. And if you're in a tent, you might be hearing the snoring of people all around you. Bluetooth noise cancelling over-ear headphones were an absolute lifesaver for me. Here's me on the mountain getting used to the idea of having less sleep.
I guess for me, I'm fond of my sleep and I feel like I get a bit cranky or I don't function well. I'm not as optimistic when I don't get a lot of sleep. But I guess, again, one of the nice lessons on the mountain here is that, or doing a trek like this, is that you make the best of what you have. And I quickly realised, to be complaining about waking up a few times in the night or spending a couple of hours awake in your tent listening to the wind just seems to be really selfish because these wonderful people you can hear behind me are pretty much working 20-hour days. When we go to bed, they're cleaning up and getting things ready for the morning, and by the time we get out of our tent in the morning, they've already been up since about 4:30, preparing everything for the breakfast and everything. So, I just keep thinking, well, if I don't have a huge amount of sleep, then they have less, and that is the truth. So yeah, sleep is broken sleep. Some nights having good sleep, some nights having bad sleep. That's just something you got to deal with, and I'm trying to get used to that.
So, who's on the trip? What kind of people go on these kinds of treks? Well, the answer is everybody. All ages, all walks of life, all jobs, all life circumstances. Some people are using the trip to help them get over some emotional trauma they've been dealing with. Other people just want to see what they're made of. And some don't even know why they're there in the first place. There was a young woman in my group on Kilimanjaro who misheard me talking about the trek on the radio and signed up straight away because she thought she was going on safari. That was a shock to the system, but fair play to her, she stuck it out. Well done, Marie. They were all Irish on my Kilimanjaro trip. There were about 17 of us, and the Everest Base Camp trek was a lot smaller, 6 of us, plus a doctor.
So, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Therese Malka, and I'm a wilderness and expedition physician.
And Colorado native Therese is the perfect person to chat about the next question, which is a big one. What is the story with altitude?
The classic symptoms are headache, which almost everybody gets no matter what you do. Stomach issues, usually low appetite, but you can get some nausea or vomiting. And then dizziness, lightheadedness, vertigo is incredibly common. And then insomnia or sleep disturbance. Those are the 4 hallmark classic symptoms.
Yeah, a lot of our crew reported pretty broken, poor sleep last night, and
yes.
I wonder how much is that down to altitude. I guess we were sleeping at 3,000 meters, and how much is just because it's all new. You're lying on the ground on a mat in a tent.
It's a mix, but our brain is very oxygen and carbon dioxide sensitive, so it really kind of freaks out our breathing center when we're asleep, and the oxygen level feels different, and it will startle you awake a little bit.
Oh, okay. So it wants to wake you up because it's basically scanning. It's doing its own readings, and then it goes, an issue here. Maybe you should be awake.
Exactly.
Do you ever come across people who have done some high altitude training in advance, and do you see any results? Positive results as a result of that training, or is a lot of that down to your genetics and your general fitness?
We wish that there was more training you could do. Like, we used to think sleeping in a barometric tent or kind of wearing a mask that lowers your oxygen might help your body.
Yeah.
And the studies show that really doesn't do much. There's certainly benefit to doing some trips to altitude.
Yeah.
Within a week or 2 prior to travel, that would help.
And so I guess you get very confident triathletes feeling like they're going to take this in their stride, literally. And you hear anecdotes of people literally smoking their way up the mountain and being fine.
Absolutely. Or the much older people, or the kind of tubby guy will do amazing.
Yeah.
And then I'm evacuating out absolutely a triathlete.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
It's very interesting. And we've tried study after study to predict who's going to do well at altitude at sea level, and really can't find any factor that predicts. And interestingly, even when I was in Nepal, the Sherpa will occasionally get very severe altitude illness. And they've lived there their whole lives. It can be so random and unpredictable.
Well, speaking of which, the terrain is getting quite random and unpredictable, so I will end this interview.
Focus on breathing.
Yeah. But thanks, Therese. That's really interesting.
I was generally okay with altitude. I had little bits of nausea here and there. I definitely got the headaches, but I found Panadol Extra to be amazing. That's the Panadol with the bit of caffeine in it. They really helped me with those headaches. Some people don't feel the effects, some people get really sick, and you don't know till you get there. Here I am feeling altitude effects for the first time at 4,000 meters.
So this activity you can hear around me is our lunchtime base camp at Lava Tower Camp. So it's at 4,627 meters. Now this was without a doubt the toughest hike I've done so far, because we'd heard about altitude and what it can do to your body, and I was definitely feeling it. Stomach cramps, a little bit of dizziness. Interestingly enough, anxiety. I was feeling a lot of anxiety coming up, and I wasn't alone. There was definitely a few people feeling very anxious. And what it seems to do is amplify whatever you're feeling in your mind. So if you're prone to what ifery in your mind, what if this goes wrong, what if that goes wrong, you'll start to feel it a little bit more. If you're feeling like you're making mistakes and getting in the way, you're going to feel that more. If you're prone to beating yourself up, you're going to feel that more. So that's been really interesting to just watch. But thankfully, as soon as I hit the camp here, I started to feel really good again. So hopefully that's me acclimatizing.
Now, to help with altitude, there is a medicine you can take. It's called Diamox. And a lot of people take that from a precautionary point of view. I took it on Kilimanjaro. I didn't take it on Everest. And I was pretty much the same both times. But you know, there is one side effect of altitude that Dr. Therese failed to mention.
Here's a little nugget of information. You know the way when you're on an airplane, your snacks, like a packet of crisps, that might get really fat, like they're about to burst. The same thing happens on the mountain. With the low pressure, the gas inside the packet, all my snacks are look like they want to burst out of the packets. And then, of course, if you translate that to your body, the same thing happens. You are constantly farting because the air is being pushed out of your intestines. So we've all just given up trying to have any level of decorum. You're just letting rip on the mountainside.
Another reason why you end up knowing everyone so intimately by the end of the trip. You know them literally inside and out. So, what's it like getting to the top? Well, I have to say both experiences were very different because the nature of the trek is very different. On Kilimanjaro, we have something called Summit Night. And this is where you reach a place called Kosovo Camp at 4,900 meters. You get up at 12:30 in the morning and you begin your trek for the final 1,000 meters. It's vertical, it's dark, and it's tough. It's probably the toughest physical thing I've ever had to do. Not everybody made it. 2 people just got too sick. And it's 6 hours on the world's largest Stairmaster with every weather condition you can imagine. When we got to the top of Kilimanjaro, there was deep snow and lots of it. And this is the moment I got there.
Well, we made it. We're here at the top of Kilimanjaro. We got here. I can't describe how tough it was. I had to use every meditation technique I've ever learned. And we just found some bits unbelievably hard. Then you'd kind of come back around and you'd think you were dying again. But it was incredible. And incredible to be here. Not in much of a view. You can see the sun, but this place is covered in snow. It's very beautiful. But we can't see much more than all the snow. But I'm stuck for words. I did get quite emotional as we approached. And I think if I let myself now, I'd go down on my knees and have a big old cry for myself. But I better keep it together because I got to get back down this hill.
You can tell from my voice that I'm exhausted. But you know what? It's funny. You can go from that living hell of getting through that big push where you're physically drained. And the minute you get to the top, you just feel so much better that you've made it. And you're taking pictures and suddenly forgetting all the hardship. The human mind is amazing. Everest Base Camp was a very different experience. It doesn't have that intensity of the big push of Summit Night on Kilimanjaro. Don't get me wrong, we were all very, very tired, but I didn't experience the same levels of exhaustion. And because you're not arriving at the top of a mountain, Everest Base Camp is essentially a rock outside of the camp where all the people pushing for the summit of Everest will be. So it doesn't feel like the top of anything. You've just stopped at a particular point, and you can have a mix of feelings. I definitely had more energy there than Kilimanjaro, and maybe that was due to the surprise from our guide.
And it just gets better and better. Dawa, our guide, has
Yeah,
actually been up to the top of Everest 5 or 6 times?
yeah,
6?
6 times.
He had to put up with us moaning about getting here. But he's brought celebratory biscuits.
Yes, digestive.
Hey!
There we go.
Thank you. No tea to dunk them in mine, but okay.
Grab it.
A for effort.
Oh, thank you. Congratulations.
Well done, guys.
You made it.
It's amazing how miserable we all were about 10 minutes ago.
Oh, those plain old digestives never tasted so good. And like I said, for many climbers, base camp is just the beginning.
Well, with the effort it took to get here, it kind of puts it into perspective what it's like to arrive here and this only be the start of your summit climb. So major hats off to anyone attempting that. And it's funny because we get as far as kind of the big rock outside the camp, and they don't let anybody in case we bring all our disgusting diseases in and wreck their expedition. But it's kind of like, you know, when you arrive at like a hotel on your holidays abroad, and then you see, oh wow, there's really posh sunbeds that we're not allowed into. That's what it's like.
And you know what? That's one of the key differences between the two trips. For Kilimanjaro, you're very much focused on getting to the top. It's all about reaching the summit, getting ready for summit night, thinking about summit night. How am I going to feel? How are my energy levels going to be? I think a lot of this is because you're not passing through any towns, any villages. There's just not a huge amount to focus on other than keep moving up. For Everest Base Camp, because it's not necessarily the summit of a mountain, as I said, for me it seemed more about the journey itself. And that's something that our Sherpa guide Dawa, king of the digestive biscuit, explained to us on day one. He warned us not to get caught up in the focus of just reaching base camp. It was about all the different stages and scenery and landscapes. And you certainly get your fill walking through the Himalayas. It's got all the things that you've seen in the pictures. The prayer flags, the snowy mountains, the vast landscapes, the tiny villages and the smiley faces. It really is a special trip. Which brings me on to the lessons of a trip like this. Well, the lessons start to fill your mind as soon as you turn to head for home and begin to leave the mountain.
So mixed emotions today, leaving. If you'd asked me yesterday, I would have said, get a chopper and get me off this godforsaken rock. We were all so exhausted. I guess I'm feeling mixed. I'm obviously glad to be getting off the mountain because it's very challenging living, and the camping is tough and the climbing is tough and physically it's tough. But also there's a huge part of me that has a big just amount of gratitude for the experience that it's given me. And I know it all may sound a bit Oprah Soul Sunday, but the lessons that it's taught me and that will continue to teach me for a long time to come, and not just me, the whole group. It's amazing to see people go through what they think is their lowest and come out the other side.
And of course the big question is, why do we want to do it in the first place? I think the reasons are different for everybody, but if I ask myself why I wanted to go on these treks, some part of me has always enjoyed getting out of my comfort zone. Same thing that drove me onto a comedy stage, I guess. It's the same thing that brought me up to those two mountains. I like to see how I perform in challenging environments. I get an enormous sense of accomplishment from doing hard things. It's a good way to test yourself. Everyone has a mountain to climb. It will always be our go-to metaphor for challenge. And of course, there's just getting to see incredible parts of the world that maybe you wouldn't naturally visit. I always wanted to visit Nepal in particular. Obviously, with my interest in meditation and spirituality, being in the heart of those Buddhist traditions, I really found it fascinating. And I got to spend a night at a monastery and sit with the monks as they repeated their mantras. It was really special. I also had an aunt who was a missionary. She was a medical missionary, a fantastic surgeon, who lived and worked in Tanzania for many, many years. And as a young fella, I didn't pay much heed to her stories or her whole experience. It just seemed very remote. But actually, when I got to Tanzania, I felt this very strong connection to her, and I could finally understand what it was that brought her there, the wildness of the place, the wonderful people that populate it. And that will be my most important takeaway from both trips, the people who lived there and the people that I travelled with. And it's a very particular relationship you build up with people on a trek. You see each other at your strongest and your weakest, and the level of support you have for each other, it's heartwarming. And I'll never forget the porters, whether in Nepal or Kilimanjaro. They will forever be the yardstick, the baseline, the calibration that brings me back down to earth whenever I catch myself feeling sorry for myself. When I hear myself moaning, when I get cynical about things in my life or society that I feel just aren't working, I think of those men and women carrying our bags, getting up earlier, going to bed later, leaving warm water outside my tent, bringing me cups of tea, heating up the water in my bottle so that I can have heat in my sleeping bag, and all with a smile, with warmth. And in the case of Kilimanjaro, a never-ending desire to sing so that your spirits could be lifted when you were struggling. They were just incredible. And you learn so many things on the mountain. You learn patience, something I've had to work at over the years. The very act of just walking slowly, of slowing down, of not being busy and in a rush. You're literally taking it step by step. Poly, the Kilimanjaro porters say. Slowly, slowly. And you know what? In today's busy world, it can take some getting used to, even for a meditation teacher.
Now, the first thing that strikes you when you start is how unbelievably slow you're walking. It feels like a joke. It feels like... Do you remember if you ever did a slow bicycle race in school? And the point was to go as slowly as possible without falling over. This is what it feels like. But I guess it's all to do with the altitude. If you work your body too hard, even though you feel fit, you're going to amplify the effects of altitude sickness. So even though everything in your body, particularly someone like me who likes to walk fast everywhere, everything is saying go faster, you really have to fight that.
If you go on a trip like this, you just can't help learning resilience, determination, and testing that power that we all have in our mind to stop the what-ifery and to stay in the present moment a little bit more, as explained by my fellow trekker, Jer, on Summit Night.
Sure.
Yes. How did you find the time since we left the camp?
Do you want the honest answer?
Yes.
No, I won't go there.
You were in front of me, and I always find the people in front of you look like they're not having any problems.
So I was.
You looked solid as a rock to me, and you were inspiring me.
I was in a deep meditative state of counting to 90, taking a sip of water and then counting to 90 again.
Amazing.
That was it.
Yeah.
That was my method.
I just kept repeating, I am fit, I am strong, I am healthy, I am fit, I am strong. And you feel your heart going. Anyway, well done, guys.
Yeah,
Just
well
one more
done.
bit to go.
I absolutely loved Jer, and you know, she saved me. I made sure I was walking behind her because her steps looked so confident and strong that they were inspiring me to keep going. And I thought, if Jer can feel that strong and sure-footed, then I can too. She was great, and so were all the other wonderful people on the treks. We're still in the WhatsApp groups together, and we're still cheering each other on for all the other challenges we're taking in life. And some are still meeting up for hikes here at home. So that's it, folks. I hope that gave you an insight into what it's like to take on one of these challenges like Kilimanjaro or Everest Base Camp. Maybe you'll be tempted. Maybe I've put you off altogether. But believe me when I say, I am so glad I did those treks. Yes, there were moments when I was doing it, when I was questioning my decision, but You know what? I think it speaks to our relationship with stress. These are stressful things to do, but we get the benefit of that stress. It allows us to grow, to see what we're made of, to challenge ourselves, to find comfort in the discomfort. Science tells us that if we can see stress as something that can help us to grow, we literally live longer. Most of all, I see these trips as a hard reset, just like you would do on your phone. The factory reset that helps us reconnect with the things that matter. We feel gratitude for the people in our lives. We appreciate the wonderful things that we have and all the opportunities we have. It helps us to get out of those moany mental grooves. We stop telling ourselves the same stories for a while, and we begin to look at those metaphorical mountains in our lives, whatever they may be, and think, you know what? I think I've got this. That's it for this week and for the season. Thank you so much for listening throughout the season. It really means a lot. This podcast means so much to myself and Brian, my producer. We love that you enjoy it and that you get things that are helpful to you out of it. And we can't wait to come back and speak to you soon. Go to dermotwhelan.com for podcast news, access to my exam stress seminar, live shows, best-selling books, and of course, you'll get my newsletter too. Thank you, everybody, for listening. You've been tuned into the Mindful Podcast with me, Dermot Whelan. Producer is Brian Connolly. Title music by Dave Moore. And all our YouTube, web and social content is by Katie at ungracefulwebs.com. Unwreck your head. De-stress your life. Talk to you next time on the Mindful Podcast. Just stepped off the plane. It's very green countryside. Lots of cloud. It's raining. And they all speak a very strange language. Yep, I'm definitely in Sligo.